the Libyan people moderate. They are not in any way falling up in the hands of such organizations such as Al-Qaeda. But Gaddafi is trying to frighten the West, trying to scare everybody about this uprising, and he's trying to find any reason to say to the West that the future Libya is going to pose a threat. That's not true, and he knows that is not true. And I talk with so many journalists, so many officials in different governments today, and nobody believes him.
Right. Much of the country, it seems from reports, is already not in the control of Gaddafi. Who is taking over in some of those cities which are no longer under his control?
Well, the city's inhabitants forming committees to run the affairs of the city. In El Baida, for instance, they have two committees, one administrative committee and the other one is security committee. And I understood that that is the case of each of the cities which fall under the control of the people. Now,
has his son, Saif al-Islam, sort of ruined his chances of any succession and ruined his reform credentials by how he's handled this crisis?
Well, we know Saif al-Islam for a long time. We know that he is no difference than his father. He's another Gaddafi. He's another tyrant. But unfortunately, some of people got deceived. Even some of the Western governments got deceived of what he was talking about reforms which never delivered, about free press which never happened, about many things which never done. And he wanted to just gain time for his father. And now Gaddafi's son, Saif, is showing naked in front of everybody that he is nothing more than a small dictator, and he will be more dangerous than his father if he ever took power in Libya.
All right, Ibrahim Sahad, thanks for your thoughts. Well, the army abandons tanks in eastern Libya as anti-government forces occupy Tobruk Airport. We'll have that story after the break, plus the latest from MK at our web desk.
Yes, well, Venezuela's Hugo Chavez, thought to be one of Gaddafi's friends, has been tweeting within the last hour on Libya. Find out what he has to say a little later on.
Well, Libya was again top of the agenda as the US President Barack Obama spoke to the leaders of France, Britain and Italy on Thursday. For more on this, let's cross over to Daljit Dhaliwal in Washington. Daljit.
Sammy, thanks very much. The White House says that they talked about a range of options about how to respond to the crisis, but Obama's critics say that the talking still hasn't translated into tangible results. Patty Culhane has more on that story.
As the reports of violence continue to pour out of Libya, along with a steady stream of refugees, President Barack Obama did address the issue, but only about what it will mean for Americans at the gas pump.
We actually think that we'll be able to ride out the Libya situation and it will stabilize.
The president said all options are on the table to stop the violence, but the only action he has talked about so far is talk, consulting with other leaders and finalizing plans to send his top diplomat to Europe next week. The White House is pushing back against criticism that it isn't moving fast enough.
You know, we expect to take action in the near term to with the international community to, we believe, hopefully compel the Libyan government to stop killing its own people.
The first step they support, kicking Libya off the Human Rights Council. That process should start at the UN on Friday. In the meantime, we've learned about another possible concern for the U.S., Libya's chemical weapons. When Libya agreed to give up its nuclear program, it was also supposed to destroy its chemical weapons. But because of a fight over funding, that aspect of the deal hasn't been completed. According to the international watchdog group, Libya still has more than 9 metric tons of operational mustard gas stored 900 kilometers outside of Tripoli.
There are some chemical weapons-related materials that remain in Libya today, but they are not in weaponized form. And we believe that these materials remain secure, but we are closely monitoring the situation.
Monitoring, talking, and evaluating, with a promise that more action could follow. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Libya's former justice minister says that Colonel Gaddafi has chemical weapons that he may use. But Washington is downplaying this, saying that the chemicals in question remain secure. So let's take a closer look at this. In 2003, soon after Saddam Hussein was toppled by US-led forces in Iraq, Libya agreed to dismantle its nuclear and chemical weapons programs. In return, the Bush administration resumed diplomatic relations and lifted economic sanctions. The following year, Libya destroyed 3,300 empty aerial bombs for dispersing mustard gas and other chemical agents. But disputes between Washington and Tripoli over funding and logistics have held up plans to get rid of Libya's chemical agents and its chemical weapons production facility. Libya was to have destroyed all 23 tons of mustard gas by the end of last year, according to the Hague-based Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. But 9.5 tons remains. The OPCW says that Libya was given an extension until this May to get rid of the rest. Jonathan B. Tucker is an expert on chemical and biological weapons. He was also a UN biological weapons inspector in Iraq in 1995. I asked him, what material does Libya have now which they could potentially weaponize?
Well, it has about 50% of its original stockpile of mustard agent, which is a blister agent. It causes harm by causing severe chemical burns to the skin and the eyes, and if inhaled can be fatal. Libya also has a number of precursor chemicals that could be used to make nerve agents, but it was never able to actually produce those chemicals, which are much more deadly than mustard gas.
So can it weaponize what it has right now?
Probably not, at least in a militarily significant way, because 3,300 aerial bombs designed for the delivery of chemical weapons were destroyed by the OPCW back in 2004. So if Libya were to use its chemical agent, which is in bulk form, it would have to develop, for example, IEDs, or very primitive delivery devices.
Nevertheless, he has made some terrible, horrific threats against the Libyan population. Is something like his chemical weapons, whatever is remaining of his stockpile, is it likely that this threat is real enough for the international community to be concerned about it?
Well, I think there are two grounds for concern. One, that the agent could be delivered in a very crude manner, even just poured on the ground, because anyone who came in contact with that material would be severely burned. There is also the risk that if he deploys his troops away from the bunkers where the bulk agent is stored, there might be some danger of terrorists getting access to that material and using it to create, for example, chemical IEDs. So there is a security risk associated with even the bulk agent.
But presumably these weapons would be